And welcome into Shooting the Breeze. I'm Samir Kumar, joined with Tim Mohout on this early Sunday morning. This is our 10th episode, right, Tim?
Yes, it is. We hit double digits, Samir. We're rolling into
Yes.
the NFL season. Time is flying. I know it's been a couple weeks since we were last up and rolling. That's because I'm back in PA, and you've got some big running around yourself that you've been doing lately. We've both been doing. We've had weddings and bachelor parties and all kinds of things. So lots of exciting things in the work. And I do want to take a quick moment. We gave Nick Hyden, our good buddy, a shout out when he got married. We just saw another one of our college friends get married, and our mutual friend Michael Brill and Bailey Goodon. You and I were at Mike's bachelor party. Had a lot of fun there a couple weeks back, and then last week Mike and Bailey tied a knot. Great couple, two great families, and I was very lucky to have had the opportunity to go out there and see that. So just a quick congratulations to both of them, and of course to, as we said, Nick Hyden as well, who are all taking the next step in life and are the first, as I wrote in I think both cards, to become true adults. So good for all of them. So. But yeah, happy to be back here on Shooting the Breeze, and it's not like we don't have a shortage of talking points. I mean, we're on the precipice. Oh, can't even call it the precipice. The NFL season's underway, and today's the first big game Sunday of the year, and then of course we got a lot of good stuff floating around the rest of the sports world with just some of the other major sports, and of course we'll touch on those in just a sec.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and also the NBA Hall of Fame induction ceremony was on Friday, and you know, there are some big names that were inducted into the Hall of Fame this Friday. Much of which I grew up watching from an early childhood age. First of all, Jason Kidd got inducted into the Hall of Fame. Steve Nash was also inducted. So both those two point guards who went head to head a lot of times during their careers and are often debated as which one was better throughout the course of their careers. Some had better seasons one year and the other year, but their skill sets were kind of different in terms of the point guard position. And then there was also Ray Allen who got inducted, and Grant Hill, who Grant Hill, man, he was special early on in his career with the Detroit Pistons. He could have been LeBron James before LeBron James. This guy was that good. He used to average, in the 20 points per game range, give you 7 and 8 rebounds and 7 and 8 assists. This guy was versatile as all hell. He could score in any way possible, and he was on his way to being another great player. But once he got traded from the Detroit Pistons, injuries just took its toll on him, and he just wasn't the same player ever since he got traded to the Orlando Magic. He was injured pretty much every year. He only had 2 seasons in like 7 years of where he played at least 70 games for the Orlando Magic. So that's a shame there, but at least he was able to kind of recuperate his career with the Phoenix Suns. He gave you double digit scoring, some versatile play and 3-point shooting, but he wasn't the same superstar player. But at least he was able to parlay his career into a later stage and still be an effective role player in that second half of his career after that rough stint in Orlando. But Grant Hill, still deserving Hall of Famer, was still very gracious of everything that's happened to him. I give him a lot of credit for how he's bounced back and kind of embraced that role player status of himself late into his career. And then there's Ray Allen, who he's had a hell of a career as well. Right, he's currently ranked first in all time on the 3-point shooting list. He's made the most 3-pointers in NBA history. That may not be the case once Steph Curry is all said and done, but we'll have to wait and see. But Ray Allen has also himself had himself a hell of a career with Milwaukee Bucks, Seattle Supersonics, Boston Celtics, and Miami Heat. Well, with the Miami Heat, he pretty much got himself an easy ring playing with LeBron James. Granted, he hit that big game-winning three in Game 6 against the San Antonio Spurs in 2013. He came up big there, but his motives at that point were this Boston Celtics team's not going to win anything anytime soon. So I might as well just go take a pay cut, join the Miami Heat, and get myself a ring. However, the Boston Celtics were not very fond of his decision making at that point, and Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce kind of turned on him after winning that championship in 2008. Rajon Rondo also wasn't happy, but despite all of that, Ray Allen was still one of the most prolific three-point shooters I've ever seen, and he was a hell of a scorer himself. He was able to get to the basket at will, and really, you know, just he was a threat offensively night in and night out. And then there's Steve Nash, two-time back-to-back MVPs. Much up for debate how much the second MVP he really deserved. There's Kobe Bryant, who had a hell of a season that year too, but the Suns were just a dominant team that year that didn't win a championship. So, but Steve Nash got the MVP just because the Suns were a much better team than the Lakers in many people's eyes. But that's not to take away from Steve Nash's amazing NBA career. He had a good run with the Mavericks as well, with Dirk Nowitzki, and then with the Phoenix Suns, the run and gun with Mike D'Antoni. Had a great run with Amari Stoudemire, Shawn Marion. He just kind of, in a way, he revolutionized basketball. That's where you see a lot of Steph Curry play. Honestly, you see a lot of Steph Curry shooting from deep and kind of running the offense in a run and gun type style. So Steve Nash was a big. He kind of helped lead the blueprint for the Golden State Warriors in a way. So, all credit to Steve Nash for what he's done in his NBA career with those two MVPs and just some amazing run and gun offense.
Well, when you're talking about a very, and I've said it many times at this point, when you're talking about a very limited NBA fan, and not in lack of interest, but in lack of just hours, I guess you could say, of watching games and putting in the observational study that Samir, you have done, and I have a couple friends who are really big NBA fans. When you compare that to me, it was very limited in that, and I can still pull up some memories or just know certain things about certain guys. That probably is Hall of Fame worthy in that the guys that dominated the game when you and I were growing up, Samir. And I do know, I've seen Ray Allen play. I've watched some of his big moments, not all, obviously. But Ray Allen, first and foremost, I'll just touch off on that. Yeah, I make the argument that he was part of the Big Three in Boston. He wasn't part of the Big Three in Miami. He went to Miami to get a ring, and he accomplished just that. But he probably had the biggest play of that entire championship series that year when in Game 6, Miami fans were flocking to the exit, actually left the building with less than a minute to go, and Ray Allen hits that three, and they all tried to come running back in. Security wouldn't let them back in the building. So just the macro effect that guy brought to the floor, even as an old man at that point, was impressive to me. And when I tried to attempt to play basketball back in the day when I was a kid growing up, the only thing I could really do, being 5'0" at the time, and now 5'8", and a lot of my younger childhood being, of course, under 5 feet, all I could do was shoot, and that was limited at best as well. But on a good day, I used to be able to, throw a couple back, and I used to play knockout with our mutual buddy, Pat Bauer, and I would occasionally beat him, which is saying something given how good he is at basketball. But it was very rare. But, at the end of the day, I always appreciated shooting. And guys like Ray Allen who could drop back and hit big shots like that were always kind of cool to me. I always liked that because, like a Reggie Miller type. I know Knicks fans don't like that, but Ray Allen was kind of cool. I remember seeing highlights of him play with Boston and play across the league. Obviously, he's a journeyman. He's played a bunch of places, but I wasn't really rooting for the Heat back in the day when he was with LeBron and Bosh and Wade. But I was kind of happy to see him get one more there at the end, just because again I liked the guys that could go back and train threes from deep and were just kind of those lockdown lights out shooters. So just from that angle, happy that Ray Allen's getting recognized. Jason Kidd, I mean, Samir, I know you have a lot more
Yep.
an experience watching him play, given
Ooh.
his time with the Nets and elsewhere. But just in general, I mean, I do remember growing up, and again, when he was in his prime in the early 2000s, I remember the hype in New York. I remember the headlines. I used to read the newspaper when I was a little kid. Don't ask me why, but I remember seeing his face all over the back. He and Vince Carter, your guy,
Yep.
Vinsanity, Jason Kidd. I even remember I had a middle school project where I think you had to learn something about. You partnered up with somebody and you had to talk about like your 3 favorite things, like, and it could be anything. And one of the things this girl picked was Vince Carter and Jason Kidd. She loved the Nets backcourt. So that still stuck with me because I was blown away by that. But
Best backcourt of all time.
With Jason Kidd, that was kind of like I remember the hype that surrounded him, and I remember covering him at the end when he turned into more of when he went to coaching. Obviously, that was what my days with WFAN as an intern. I was around that time. Actually, excuse me, I was. I have to double check that. I remember when he first showed up with the Nets and then jumped over to Milwaukee. I think it was when he was with Milwaukee. I'm probably totally butchering the timeline here, but either way, I remember that being a big deal on New York radio because I was listening to it with my dad, going up on a long trip to Oswego. Some of those big games with the Nets when they made that push for the old Big Three, if you will, the remnants of it anyway. Of KG and then you get Paul Pierce in there as well. And at the end of the day, in this long ramble, again, it always seems that Kidd has been a big influential figure in New York and of course in basketball. So again, happy to see him recognized for that. And again, I know you have a lot more of a personal connection there, but. And then, I mean, there's a lot of other names. I mean, Grant Hill you touched on, but there's other names in there. That's one great thing I like about the NBA. I mean, not the NBA, excuse me, the Basketball Hall of Fame, is that they're inclusive to everything, to every level, and they bring in WNBA players, they bring in coaches from all levels, they bring in contributors. And, there was a long list this year. I'm not going to pretend to know much about the other names on this list. For some of the WNBA or even for some of the other coaches from other levels, I don't pretend to be an expert in this sport, but I think it's really cool that every year they're able to bring in a dozen or so names that can go out there and more than that, and go out and really grow the sport. And I think that's kind of for basketball, not just the NBA, but it obviously impacts the NBA. The ability to go out and be so inclusive and try to grow this game as much as they possibly can. I think they set a good standard for all the other sports to kind of look at because, you talk about the Hall of Fames and all the other sports, it's very much relegated outside of hockey. It's relegated primarily to the top professional league. You can see other kind of, I think, exceptions made in hockey, but baseball, football, very much you're locked into that pro level, and they're not really considering everything else, and it's a little different obviously in the NBA. So it's cool to see all of that, and again, I think to see these guys when they're able to come back and get the recognition that they deserve after all these years, guys like Maurice Cheeks, guys who were long time guys. It's always cool to see that, and it always gives you goosebumps watching those speeches. And at the end of the day, I think it's a really nice class this year for basketball, and it's I'm sure our buddy Pat Bauer. I mean, I didn't even touch on Steve Nash. He's a big guy. I knew a lot of kids growing up who loved who loved Steve Nash because hey, he wasn't your traditional player in that this is a guy I think wasn't he big in skateboarding and he was.
He was like
coming down from Canada. He was kind of like this unconventional guy, and he was just such a great player.
Yeah, he was just like a cool kind of player to kind of root for, just like his style.
This is what I was looking for. He was kind of like I know he played well into the 2000s. Obviously, that's a good chunk of his career, but he was kind of like the epitome of a '90s kid. Like that kind of. I don't know why it kind of resonates with me because obviously his big thing was basketball, but he had such dynamic skill set, and he had some other interests, and he always struck me as just a really cool guy. And especially with the group of people that I grew up with, I remember him being like an icon, and that's again for not necessarily. I mean, again, I have a good number of guys who are friends with and girls who are big basketball fans growing up, way better fans than I was of the game, but. Again, when they can make that impact, especially when he was playing in Phoenix and here in New York, he's got this huge following, at least that I knew, and I can only imagine what that means across the rest of the basketball fanscape. That's really impressive, and again, that's just the effect. I mean, that's not even talking about his play like you did. That's another guy that was really. I mean, I got to college, and guys were raving about Steve Nash still, even as he was getting old, and guys from all over the place, guys who weren't just New Yorkers up at Oswego, there were others elsewhere, that would just go on and on about loving how he played. I think I met someone who was a Phoenix Suns fan just because watching Steve Nash grow up while they were growing up. So, again, another one of those macro influences, if you will, on the game, and it's always awesome to see those guys rewarded.
Absolutely. And Tim, you mentioned that I have a personal connection with Jason Kidd because obviously I grew up a New Jersey Nets fan, and he's one of the first players that I really rooted for. Him, Vince Carter, and that whole New Jersey Nets squad, pretty much. So, having said that, I kind of had a tribute from Jason Kidd for getting into the Hall of Fame that I would like to kind of get to. So, here it goes. On June 28th, 2001, on the heels of yet another disappointing season in the Meadowlands, the New Jersey Nets made a franchise-altering move and acquired All-Star point guard Jason Kidd in exchange for another All-Star point guard, Stephon Marbury. From that day forward, Kidd exclaimed during their first team dinner that the losing is over and pleaded to his teammates to stick with me. Results almost immediately followed. The Nets went from 26 wins the year prior to 52, with the core group of Kenyon Martin, Keith Van Horn, and Kerry Kittles. That team defied all odds and made it to their first NBA Finals in franchise history. However, the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe proved to be too tough for that Nets squad. Man, that was a tough team, I'll tell you. They proceeded to sweep them 4-0. After that, though, Rod Thorne and company suddenly saw an opportunity for the Nets to break through and win their first NBA championship. And with Richard Jefferson ready to take on a bigger role, they packaged Keith Van Horn and Todd McCullough to the Philadelphia 76ers for Dikembe Mutombo. An aging Mutombo was still seen as a threat defensively at the time and could have given the Nets a much-needed presence in the paint to deal with the likes of Shaq and Tim Duncan. However, the injury bug hit him at the wrong time as he suited up just 24 times in the regular season and was hardly a factor in the playoffs. Despite Mutombo not being much of a factor, New Jersey still ended up advancing to the finals for the second consecutive year. The Nets looked hungrier during that run and at times looked like the superior team. However, the firepower of Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili, with the excellent coaching of Greg Popovich, eventually proved to be too much for the Nets as they lost in 6 games. Though Kidd didn't take the Nets to the finals again, that doesn't mean his impact on the franchise was any less. He made the must-see basketball every night. He always had a way of reading defenses and getting the ball to his man in tight spots. He literally bowled a basketball down the court to Lucius Harris for an easy layup. He was just impossible to guard at times, especially in transition. If he didn't see an opening in front of him, he'll just casually fake out the defender in front of him and get the ball to his man behind him for an easy dunk without even looking. If he senses a defender is off balance or leaning too heavily in one direction, he'll quickly bounce the ball right past you to find the open man for the easy bucket. If he had any sliver of space, he was going to take advantage of it and somehow get the ball to his man. Not to mention, he made all those no-look passes and lobs to Kenyon Martin, Vince Carter, and Richard Jefferson look easy, when in reality, it's not. You have to be quick and get the ball right to the sweet spots fast enough, or else it would be a turnover. While Kidd was purely a magician on the court, what really made him special is how he had that rare ability to make others around him better, including lesser named players. For example, the Nets signed Mikey Moore for the 06-07 season. He averaged an unspectacular 3 points per game for the Seattle Supersonics the previous year. However, with Jason Kidd being there for him to feed him the ball in his sweet spots, Moore averaged a career high 10 points per game and led the league in shooting at 61%. Coincidence? I think not. The list goes on, but as Vince Carter once put it, he got guys paid. And paid is exactly what Moore got, as he earned a 3-year, $18 million contract with the Sacramento Kings the next season. Jason, as a fan, I can't thank you enough how much you've meant to the Nets organization. You turned around this laughing stock of a franchise and made them much-seen TV for much of the 2000s. You and Vince Carter formed one of, if not the best backcourts of all time, with at least one highlight play between the both of you every night. You spoiled me on a nightly basis just watching how you went about the game, and therefore set the standard of what I expect from my point guard every night. If I didn't see that replicated, then I'm immediately disappointed. Your selflessness and ability to dominate a game without even scoring the ball is what truly turned this franchise around. It's a shame that the Nets front office couldn't pull off a trade for the widely available Jermaine O'Neal or Kevin Garnett at the time to pair them up with you and VC. Richard Jefferson may have had to go in any scenario, but I truly believe that KG or Jermaine would have picked up the scoring slack alongside VC. And you were the type of point guard that needed a big man to succeed anyway. Maybe I'm just crazy. But if the Nets weren't thinking too far ahead into Brooklyn and actually invested in the New Jersey roster back then there would be at least one NBA championship banner hanging from the Barclays Center rafters today. Though I wish your playing and coaching careers with the Nets ended on better terms, I'm glad you were still able to get that ring you deserved at the Dallas Mavericks. After all, when I met you back in 2009 at the Izod Center when the Nets were playing the Mavericks, with you being on the Mavericks, you pointed that out to me that Dallas had the better roster than New Jersey. I was, chanting or hollering at you, come back to New Jersey. I miss you, Jason Kidd. We suck without you. Being that fan, being 14 years old, I didn't think you were going to respond. Immediately, you said, but I like it, you pretty much said, but I like it better here. I got Dirk, I got Sean Marion, I got Jason Terry. He was like pointing out all his teammates. This was the year before he won the championship in Dallas. So he was pointing out all his teammates and pretty much telling me, I got a better situation here. Why would I want to come back? I was like, wow. I was like, okay, like, you're really going to make this New Jersey Nets fan disappointed? But, that just kind of spoke volumes to how, like, he just wanted a better situation. He wanted out of New Jersey because Dallas was a better situation. But anyway, he was still cool to meet. Afterwards, I high-fived him. I thanked him for what he did with the Nets, got his autograph, and, that was a cool experience to meet Jason Kidd. But, thank you, number 5, for all you've done for the Nets. And congratulations on being inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame to put a cap on your spectacular career.
Well, Samir, I think that's very well said. And, I think one thing that always, or it never really ceases to amaze me is your ability to meet these people. I mean, that's the thing is that the passion not only as a fan, but just as someone who puts themselves in spots to meet their idols is pretty cool, man. Yeah, Jason Kidd, I think he's always been one to tell it like he believes it is, and again, I cannot say that I watched a ton of him play growing up, but obviously, like you're alluding to, from all the great impact, the field general, the type of player that he was. And even still has the impact in the game as a coach. I know a lot of people will debate over his legacy right now as a coach, obviously, but still opportunity perhaps in the future still to come for him and to grow. And, again, he's one of those guys that is a transcendent impact on the game. So, congratulations to him, and congratulations to all the members of this year's 2018 inductee class, and that includes a long list of contributors and WNBA players as well. I mean, I know they catch a lot of flack, in terms of just how relevant the game of women's basketball is. But hey, I give them a lot of credit. Yes, it doesn't have the audience that the other professional sports or a men's professional sport in the NBA has, obviously. But those women go out there and bust their tail, and they work really hard for what they do, and they, it means no less to them if they have 1,000 fans or 100,000 fans in front of them. So, you know what? If you have the game, what's the old saying? Game respects game. I'm not saying that I have game. I'm just saying, I think that whole class has some mutual respect for one another. I think anytime you're inducted together, that's kind of a special bond, whether you never met that person or it's someone you're friends with for a long, long time. Those members of this year's Hall of Fame class can all kind of hold that together as, hey, we went in together, we all deserved it. You know what? Credit where credit is due. And again, I think of the Hall of Fames, I like what the Basketball Hall of Fame does best. I mean, it's hard to hate any of their Hall of Fames. Obviously, you can argue with some of their decisions and non-inclusions, and that's another discussion for another day. In all sports, you could bring it up. But at the end of the day, I tip my hat to the members of this year's class as well as the Basketball Hall of Fame in general, just doing a great job growing the game of basketball.
Absolutely. I mean, just like also to touch up on Kidd, he just made everything look easy out there. Like literally, if you go back and watch his highlights, some of the passes he makes, you're just like, how the hell did he do that? Like, just growing up, like I said before, like he just kind of made that a standard to me. Like I expected to see that on a nightly basis, him or finding Vince Carter for a dunk like that, or like throwing a ball off the backboard to Kenyon Martin for the easy slam, or like all these alley oops. Like, that just became the standard to me, and I'm lucky to like have been able to see that from an early age, and then like throughout the rougher years of Nets basketball when that stuff didn't happen, it just became boring and I would tune out. So like, it was just amazing how like one or two players can really set a standard so high that like anything less than that would just be boring to you.
Fair. That's a fair point. And, I think at the base level of it, as far as just the appeal of any sport is at the base level, we're all fans. I mean, yes, players and athletes and coaches all have the technical side, and there's so much to analyze and hone and practice over and over and over again. But everyone still comes back to that same basic instinct that when you see something amazing, you're going to be blown away. Even if you're playing against someone, you can talk to athletes across the sports world when they've played against the guy who's in the Hall of Fame, and there is a mutual respect there, and that they say, hey, I got to play against one of the greatest. I might not have always liked the result. I might have loved some of the results if I was able to beat him or her. But at the end of the day, I think one of the big things with again, like you mentioned with Jason Kidd, with some obviously all the players that have been inducted into this class, is that they have that same common bond that they made everyone say wow, and that's what should be. That's what at the end of the day should be recognized. And I know a lot of people, a lot of athletes have been able to do that. I'm watching up in the background here as we're recording. I just saw a top 10 play from some high school in the middle. I think it actually looked like Canadian football, but either way, some not low level. Canadian football's not low level, but it looked like somewhere far away, and some kid made an OBJ catch. He made an over the shoulder, behind the back, leaping backward catch with one hand. I mean, not to say that kid's going to be in the Hall of Fame one day, but that's what we're looking for, and when players can consistently do that over and over and over again, that's when you say, hey, this is one of the all-time greats. They deserve, immortalization within the sporting world.
Absolutely. So, like, look at Donovan Mitchell this year. He took a page out of Vince Carter's book and did the same dunk in the dunk contest. So, like,
yep. The homage. That's the other thing, too. A lot of people, for those that make that kind of impact, you'll see that over and over again. You'll resonate throughout the generations, if you will. Not to sound like too cheesy, but you see those tribute dunks, you see those tribute plays. Sometimes it's a celebration in another sport. After you hit a home run or score a touchdown, one of those things where you pay homage to the guy that you grew up watching and loving. And I think that's one of the great things about sports is it there's a legacy aspect to it, as well as hey, the next generation picks up the torch, and yeah, they can pay tribute, but then they go out and they do their own thing. So that's another one of those things that makes sports so captivating. But Samir, another sport that is captivating is the NFL, and that's getting going in full swing today. Obviously, there's been one game played already, and it was not the best of games. The Eagles and Falcons met on Thursday. Close game, good ending, I guess you could say, to a certain degree. But the 26 penalties called in the game, I really hope that's not a preview of what's to come this year. But let's do our own preview, albeit an abbreviated one here, of this upcoming NFL season. And I do want to touch on one major player, one of the now banner players in the NFL, that has been getting a lot of attention, and hard not to at this point for what has been a long contract saga. And that's, of course, Le'Veon Bell of my own Pittsburgh Steelers. And now that I'm in Pennsylvania, it feels even more appropriate to bring this up, even though I know he's not per se a New York guy. Maybe he will be next year. That's another story for another day. But this is obviously one of the best premier running backs in the NFL. He's been in back-to-back years of franchise tag contract status with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Typically with running backs, and then most players, you're not going to do it a third time. You do have that option, but it's extremely expensive. So all of that said, Le'Veon Bell is going to play for another team next season. What's been going on in the last couple of weeks, for anyone who's living under a rock, I should say, is that Le'Veon Bell has been holding out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just want to make something very abundantly clear before I go off here. Le'Veon Bell is a tremendous football player, and Le'Veon Bell has every right to go out and get what he believes is his money and what he deserves. He's one of the top talents in the league. He's one of the league's banner players at this point in his career. I'm going to, at this point say I have no issue with what he's doing at face value. But there's a difference in doing something and doing something poorly, because every player is entitled to get their money, and because Le'Veon Bell is almost 99% guaranteed to be a free agent next year, Pittsburgh is in their best interest here to get as much value as they can out of him. So as Le'Veon Bell and his agent have said publicly, they know that Le'Veon Bell, as he normally is going to be run, quote-unquote, into the ground when he does come back. And for a running back who's going to be 27 next year, in the prime of their career, kind of in that golden era zone of, usually 27 to 29 is when you have some of your best years. That's the prime years for an NFL running back. And then there's usually a pretty drastic fall off at 30. I can understand Le'Veon Bell's motivation in wanting to protect his body, because he's about to get the payday of his lifetime. And it's hard for him to see Todd Gurley and now overnight David Johnson, players very similar to him at the position, on very similar talent levels, getting paid huge contracts. For Bell to sit back and not have that guaranteed money that those two do is very difficult. I get all of that. And I have no problem, even as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, diehard for as long as I can remember, with him holding out. If he made that abundantly clear up front, he did not. And this is the problem with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're one of those teams that is very talented, but when you have a lot of talent, a lot of time you have a lot of ego. And for Le'Veon Bell, that is his biggest. It's one of his biggest strengths and one of his biggest weaknesses. It's a double-edged sword, true and true. And for him to sit here and sit out, like I said, wouldn't have a problem with it. But it is very abundantly clear that that was not his original plan. His agent came out publicly a couple months ago after the franchise tag was finalized and said, listen, unless something exceptional happens, Le'Veon Bell will be in Pittsburgh playing week 1. Here's week 1. That's today. He's not here. He's not here. He is officially held out for the first game of the season. He is docked $860,000 of his $14.5 million he is guaranteed this year. So he now loses $860,000 thereabouts of that guaranteed money. So again, at face value, I have no problem with this because he's putting his money where his mouth is and saying, look, I'm willing to give that money up so I can protect myself going into next season and where I can get my real big payday. He will have to report by week 10 or he loses the season, and Pittsburgh can tag him again realistically for a very similar rate as opposed to being forced to let him go because the franchise tag escalates. That's a long conversation. But at the end of the day, he has to get here by week 10 in order to have this season count as a year against his contract. What you've seen is Pittsburgh, the Steelers themselves, kind of lose their minds a little bit here because their expectation was that he'd be here week 1, like he was last year when he held out through the preseason. And there's been a ton of flack thrown at the Steelers players who are there, their leaders, and Maurkice Pouncey, Ramon Foster. They're the 2 player reps for the team. Foster, the player rep for the Players Union. Every team has one. Foster is the Steelers. And Maurkice Pouncey, the backup. This is almost unprecedented. You never, ever, ever see players talk about other players' contracts. It's poor form. That's what it's always been considered. But I think what it stems from is what I'm saying. Le'Veon Bell very clearly had a different expectation put forward by his agent and by himself, in that he would be here week 1, that he'd be here trying to help this team win a Super Bowl, and that he would. Yes, he was protecting his body, but now he's here. Had he been up front with his teammates and with everybody else, more primarily his teammates, and said, hey, look, I'm not going to be here week 1. I'm going to come in at the very last possible second that I can because I have to get I have to be able to get paid. I'm one of the top talents. I deserve to get paid in full and for a long-term deal. I'm going to do that. If he had said that up front, none of this would be going on right now. I think, yes, Steelers fans would be upset, but the players would fully understand. But since there was this constant, and this is very consistent with Le'Veon Bell and some of the other Steelers star players, flipping and flopping going on in the media and just in general with their decision-making, you have this huge controversy. You have people screaming at the Steelers players who are ripping Le'Veon Bell because they're talking about his money. You have former players who don't understand how franchise tags work. In that Le'Veon Bell cannot get a long-term deal right now. It's against the rules of the collective bargaining agreement. He can only make the money. That was the July 31st deadline that the franchise tag gives him. That's $14.5 million now, just under $14 million because he missed the first week. Obviously, he feels that it's worth losing the first 10 weeks of his salary at the max, or at least week 1 salary, which he has already lost, to protect his body. And again, I would have no issue with that had he been upfront with what his intentions were. Given that he wasn't, I don't blame his teammates for being all angry about it. What I do get upset about, beyond all of this, is one, the national media in football I thought was better at understanding the league's rules, though they can be very complicated. Plenty of people have misunderstood that the fact that the Steelers can no longer negotiate with Bell for the season, that's the league's rule, not theirs, even though they do not negotiate typically in the regular season. Even so, they're not allowed to. July 31st was the deadline. And a lot of people, a lot of Hall of Famers, as we were just talking about in the other sports, a lot of Hall of Fame players who are analysts don't understand this fact and have been, I feel, unfairly ripping both the Steelers players and organization that are upset right now. And then on top of that, you have the flip side where the media that's critical of Bell, typically Pittsburgh media, because they've seen him over the last couple of years and some of his slip-ups off the field and getting suspended for marijuana and whatnot and having had issues in the past holding out. They've taken pot shots at Le'Veon Bell saying, hey, maybe this is because this is a drug test that he's not willing to take, because when you do come back from a holdout, and if you are like Le'Veon Bell is in the NFL's, I guess you could call it their drug program, because he's been suspended before, you have to take regular tests on a regular basis once you return to the NFL, once you return to your team facility, and once you're back, so to speak, if you're on a holdout, you do have to immediately do a drug test. I've seen now journalists speculate he's trying to avoid a drug test, which I think is extremely irresponsible unless you actually have a legitimate source that is telling you this, which wasn't the case. This is all speculation. I've seen journalists speculate. That is extremely irresponsible, and that's not fair to Le'Veon Bell. And I do understand, yes, he has a reputation. He's been caught before, but this man's done his time. He's served his suspensions. He's served his fines. You can't come out here and tell me that he's dodging a drug test at this point. And those are respected people I respect in the Pittsburgh media that have gone out and have said things like that. I'm not going to name names right now, but if it continues, I'm definitely going to put some people on blast because it's not fair. You can't go out there and throw out rumors. That's how rumors get started. That's how damages are done to contract value. That's how next year when Le'Veon Bell does negotiate with whoever he's negotiating, people will say, well, what were you missing that time for? I think that guy was right. I think, hey, this reporter who covered you for 8 years of your career, not 8, excuse me, since 2013, so we're talking about 6 years, he's seen you. He knows what your habits are. And Le'Veon Bell, to some degree, has done that to himself, but you can't come out there and put that accusation in the water when you have no proof of that. So on all kind of fronts, at this end of this very long and too long ramble here, and I do apologize for that, Samir. I think this whole situation has been just a mess for everyone. It's been a mess for the Steelers because it's yet another distraction, which they have every week. When they have these superstars that they do that are all seemingly caught up in some kind of drama. Then it's a mess for some of the media because they don't understand the rules of the NFL, which, again, I understand can be very complicated and are changing pretty rapidly with regard to the CBA and the franchise tag. And then it's a mess for the people taking pot shots because they're mad for whatever reason for a grudge at Le'Veon Bell, and then Le'Veon Bell for not being just concise with this. Again, if he had done what he's doing and had just said that's what he was going to do if he was franchise tagged, I don't think we have any kind of drama here. I think, yes, Steelers fans are going to give him flack. I understand that. Any fan base has its irrational people who are going to be mad at players, and even rational people who are just wanting to root for their team. They understand the impact Le'Veon Bell has, and without it, they understand they're not as good a team, even though a lot of people believe in his backup, James Conner. That's a discussion for another day. But at the end of the day, it's just a mess. It's a mess, Samir, and I just had to vent a little bit because I think every single side has some degree of being wrong. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, yes, they could have offered more money for premium talent. I understand why they didn't do it. They haven't technically done anything wrong. They've played this how they're supposed to play it. They tried. They gave their best offer. It was a pretty sizable offer, but it's not the offer that some of these other younger running backs are getting, like a David Johnson, like a Todd Gurley. So Le'Veon Bell saying, hey, I want more, and I understand that. But again, everybody else has egg on their face here because everyone's had some kind of take, and it's been the hot take fiesta all over the place. And I want, for everyone's sake, Le'Veon Bell to be back at some point. If he's going to hold out half the season or until week 10, which is the max he can hold out without losing the season, that's fine by me at this point. But just say that. That's my recommendation. Is you have to come out. No more of this coy stuff because no one knows. No one knows. And everyone from fantasy football players, from Steelers fans, from everywhere else, they just want to know. And if at this point, what else do you have to lose or gain by just saying, hey, I'm out till this point? That's my end of my long-winded rant.
Let
you take the floor here for a minute here, Samir. I gotta catch my breath. I'm out of shape. But
Tim,
I had to say my piece there, and then of course we can wrap up our NFL thoughts. But I don't know. I just as far as you're seeing from an outside perspective, just unbiased here, as I know you're a Giants fan. I know you're not really have any dog in this fight, but I just feel that everyone's been a little bit irresponsible here.
No, I agree. I just think that the situation has just been a mess. You pretty much hit everything right on the head. You have these journalists that come out there, make up stories just to get. I think honestly, it's just a fact of that they're trying to get ratings. They're trying to get readers. They're just trying to get attention. They're trying to get a little bit more relevant in this big world of sports media, social media, whatever. And they're kind of using Le'Veon Bell as an excuse to get a bigger name. So I think a lot of that comes into play, and just Le'Veon Bell for himself, I respect the fact that he wants a bigger payday. At the end of the day, it's a business. It's not, it's not free. It's not a charity or whatever. These guys are out there. They got to get what's theirs and ultimately make a living, especially playing a rough position such as running back where, your body can give out on you on any moment. So you have to look for the amount of money, especially playing at an elite level at that position, as you possibly can get. So I understand that standpoint, but there has been a lot of miscommunication within the organization. I agree. Le'Veon Bell should have made his intentions clear from the get-go so that the Steelers could have the opportunity to pay him what he deserves, or just be upfront with him, say, this is probably our last year doing business together, or we'll try to trade you, so that team can sign you to the extension that you're seeking, a la Khalil Mack and the Raiders to the Bears situation. At least, the Khalil Mack was traded to the Bears so that he can get his payday. So, that's another can of worms that to discuss. But I mean, you know, I think the Raiders more or less handled that situation better than the Steelers did, even though the Raiders should have kept Khalil Mack. But then again, that's another conversation for another day. But Le'Veon Bell in this situation, I don't think the teammates are coming across as very professional either, mentioning his contract in interviews and pretty much talking about their pay and say, I only get paid like $1 or $2 million or whatever. You can get your ass in here. You're making 14 million. I'm like, well, I mean, all due respect, Le'Veon Bell is a superstar. You're a quality offensive lineman, but you don't have the star power or the big name that Le'Veon Bell has. So, you better watch it in that situation. Don't throw your running back under the bus, especially when the team is trying to win a championship. I think honestly, it disappoints me that Ben Roethlisberger has been quiet during this whole situation. He hasn't served as a mentor, not mentor, as a veteran leader, speaking and trying to get things together in this situation. So shame on him for staying quiet during this situation, and quite honestly, shame on Mike Tomlin for not playing a role in this as well. I think, some of these bigger name, higher leader guys within the organization just staying quiet and not trying to diffuse the situation kind of speaks volumes to me about where this organization is at right now. I mean, no disrespect, Tim, but this is just a messy situation. I have nothing against the Steelers, but I think they're just coming across as a bunch of, you know, unprofessionals right now.
It goes back to my point about the ego. I'll disagree to a degree with you in the sense of Mike Tomlin. I don't know what else he can do at this point. He's not going to come out and scream at his players on national TV. I'm sure they've had discussions behind closed doors saying, "Hey guys, let's tone back on throwing contracts around." There have been people who have said the Pittsburgh Steelers are saying, "Hey," to their players, "Go do our dirty work. Go yell at this player for not signing with us." I don't believe that's the case at all. The Steelers don't conduct business that way. I think it's much more. I think to your point, I think it is that whole understanding that this has been the Steelers' window is coming to a close. You have maybe a good year or two left. Obviously, with Le'Veon Bell leaving after this year, there's some questions as to next year. But with Roethlisberger in the last couple of years of his career, this is popping up right in front of me again. I have the TV on in the background on mute, and they're showing exactly the people we're talking about right now and the players that are coming after each other. Now, I'm tired. I'm sorry. I'm not expecting ever that Ben Roethlisberger is going to go out there and say the thing that is going to diffuse any situation, because that's just not who he is. I understand he's looked at as the leader of the Pittsburgh Steelers because he's the franchise quarterback, but Big Ben has never been a guy who's good at that. No, I mean that from the standpoint.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I mean this is an exceptional situation. I don't know. This is an exceptional situation, though. You gotta get some skin in the game in this situation.
He's a lead-by-play guy. He's not a guy who's going to – yes, he has a vocal impact on the team in the locker room and all that. But when it comes to the media, he's Mr. Foot in the Mouth. It does not matter whatever the point is, he's going to find a way to piss somebody off. And, again, I say that with respect to his talent. I say that, again, he's a guy who motivates by going out onto the field and getting it done. That's how guys rally to him, because he does that. But then when he goes to the media, he constantly has to deviate attention. Now, in this situation, I'm not actually all that upset with exactly what he said. I mean, he did say a couple things about the Bell situation. He was the one propping up the offensive line, saying, hey, they're the ones that make it all work. He's doing that because he does have a history of, verbally juicing up the offensive line, because they're the guys who protect him. They're the guys who block. And you know what? I don't mind that in a quarterback. He also said that James Conner, if Bell were back, the backup running back for the Steelers, James Conner, should get an opportunity to play at least a little bit while Bell gets back up to speed, because James Conner's been here through the preseason. He's a second-year player. He actually had a very good preseason. So, again, I think he's more in that sense trying to pump up one of his guys who has been here, who has been not been holding out, who's put in a lot of work in the offseason and in the preseason, and it's shown. And that's why I'm not overly concerned, because he looks like he'll be an effective running back. It's not going to be Le'Veon Bell, but he looks like he'll be effective. And from that angle, Ben Roethlisberger's doing the right thing in my mind, and just trying to pump up the guys that are a little disillusioned right now with the Bell situation. But yes, he hasn't come forward, and I would be shocked if he's having conversations with Le'Veon Bell. It doesn't sound like he's having many conversations with any of the Steelers. But in this instance, I'm not all that upset with what Big Ben has said or not said. Just with what he's saying, yes, you could make a case that he could be a little more supportive of Le'Veon Bell, but guys are going to be supportive of guys who are there. Yes, the whole situation with the offensive line calling out Bell and bringing up contract numbers is a big no-no in NFL circles. It's again going back to that point of the contention window. The window of contention is closing. The guys understand that. They're frustrated because they know Le'Veon Bell gives them the best opportunity to get that ring. Because right now, on the Pittsburgh Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger now, I believe, is the only player left with a Super Bowl ring on that team, because it was James Harrison and the long snapper prior to last year, but both of those guys are gone. So I believe, if I'm remembering everything correctly, Roethlisberger is the only guy on that roster with a Super Bowl ring right now with the Steelers. So, it's, and then of course Mike Tomlin as a coach, but it's one of those things. Again, it's gonna. The Steelers are a team that tend to play down to opponents, that tend to create their own drama, that tend to create their own negative press because they either botch something on the field or they do something stupid off of it. And this is coming from a huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. In my years, that's been my team from day one. But it's just a typical start. So I think today, and they're going to be playing in the remnants of this tropical storm or hurricane or whatever that's blowing through the Midwest right now. They need to win. They need to beat an upstart Cleveland Browns team. They need to win. They need to put this behind them. And James Conner, I want him to have a big day, because if he goes out there and balls out and he does his thing, and this is a guy who was a Heisman Trophy candidate, a first-round draft pick candidate before he got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma at the University of Pittsburgh, had to take a year off, had to beat cancer before coming back and being drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's not only the talent there's a huge potential feel-good story there as well. Easy guy to root for. And just a hard-working guy who does have some talent. Again, he's not Le'Veon Bell, but he's a guy who could do some good things out there on the field. So they're going to be playing in a bit of a hurricane today. It's going to be a swamp. It's going to be not a lot of passing game. It's going to be a lot of running game, a lot of old-school football, low-scoring game, I'm guessing. And James Conner has an opportunity here today to make his own case and say, hey, look, guys, I know Le'Veon's not here, but I got you. So at the end of all that, Samir, the Pittsburgh Steelers half hour, whatever we're going on here, and even as a Steelers fan, that's more time than I wanted to spend on it. I just think, for a team that's considered one of the lead contenders for a Super Bowl here, and with time running out, today needs to be a win.
Absolutely. I think we can close off the Steelers for now, right here.
Yes. And I agree with you there. I'm going to be probably ranting and raving to myself later if things are going how they typically go in a Steelers game against a team that is not very good in the Cleveland Browns. And I can't even say that anymore. I think the Browns are going to get pretty good. But with that, Samir, looking ahead first to week one, there's a lot of games, obviously. This is a 16-game week. We already had one of them, Eagles-Falcons. And again, what was it, Penalty Fest. But looking ahead to today's games and tomorrow, I want you to give me – first, let's start with your lock. Let's start with your lock of the week in that what's a game that you are neither of us, I think, are very big bettors, but if we were to put money down, what's a game that you know the outcome right now, looking at it before any kickoffs have happened today? What's the lock of the week for Samir Kumar?
I'm going to have to say the New Orleans Saints Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. I think the Saints are going to run away with that game. Drew Brees, obviously, Alvin Kamara and company. They're just going to be running all over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially with Jameis Winston being out. I just think the Saints are going to run over the Tampa Bay Bucs, especially being home. I just think that's going to be an easy win.
And I'm with you there. I have some Saints on my fantasy team this year. It's about time. I typically don't get those guys. I think if what you're saying comes to fruition, I'm going to be a little bit happier at the end of the day, regardless of what goes down with my Steelers, because, yeah, I'm with you. Tampa Bay, Ryan Fitzpatrick's out there, Winston's suspended. Even with Winston in, I don't think they're very good.
No.
And this New Orleans Saints might be the most complete roster in the NFL. If not, if they're not, they're at their top 3. So I'm with you there. But my lock of the week, and I'm so sorry, Buffalo. I love you to death. We're rolling with the Sabres right now. We're not rolling with the Bills. The Bills are a mess. They're starting Nathan Peterman, who, to his credit, had a good preseason. But that offense is just going to get eaten alive by the Baltimore Ravens. And I don't have any joy in saying that. But the Baltimore Ravens have a real deal defense. Their offense has looked better than it has in quite some time in the preseason. Joe Flacco looks actually pretty motivated. And if he falters, you have a pretty talented young rookie. And, of course, in Lamar Jackson. So, I think that's going to be an absolute bloodbath. I'm sorry to say it because I'm rooting for the Bills to get it together. I want them to be a competitive team. But I think they did make the right choice putting Peterman in because the team's not ready for Allen yet, and he's not ready yet either. And to put him in a situation without many receivers, with just LaShawn McCoy as your main weapon and a pretty bad offensive line, that's not a success for any recipe for any rookie success. So, at the end of the day, I think that's going to be a bloodbath. I have the Ravens looking at my score sheet, 35-13 in that one. I think they're going to run wild. And I do believe Buffalo's defense is actually decent. They're just going to be on the field all day. They're going to be on the field all day, and they're going to get tired, and Baltimore's going to bowl over them. And I hate it because I don't like the Ravens, but that's my lock of the week. Now, for the shock of the week.
We're doing scores? We're doing scores for the...
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. I do a separate pick'em with a couple of my buddies, just where we throw out scores just for fun. I'm just throwing out that score because that's what I had written down from earlier in the week when I filled out all my picks of the week. So
I got the Saints scoring like 35, 38, and the Buccaneers will be lucky to get like 3. I think they'll have like a field goal.
You're saying 38-3?
Yeah, 38-3. I'm locking that in.
I'm not too far off. I got to check mine. What did I write down here? I have it as 33-14. I gave the Buccaneers a little more credit because I like Mike Evans.
I think Ryan Fitzpatrick, he had his time. they might get 6. I'll say 6. Okay. I'll say 6.
Samir is not a believer in Fitzmagic, and I don't blame you.
I'm not at all.
Like 40 years old at this point. I give him credit. He's made a lot of money as a backup, but I'm with you. The Saints' defense is very good, and their offense is elite. So, but yeah, give me a shocker. Give me an upset.
An upset. All right. I'm liking Houston over New England today. I think
Houston over New England. Okay.
I like Deshaun. Deshaun Watson in this game. I think he'll be rejuvenated coming off that injury. And I think, New England kind of has some things to solve because, they lost some key pieces, Danny Amendola and Edelman suspended.
Yep.
I just think this team's going to be a little off balance. Tom Brady's Tom Brady. He'll find a way somehow, some way. But, I just think right now their losses are just too big to overcome, and Houston can come and just kind of pounce.
I'm kind of with
It'll
you
be
there.
a close game, though. I think it'll be like 21-17.
21. Okay, because I have the Patriots winning that game 23-20, but I agree with all the points you mentioned there. I mean, there have been games in the past. It's been a while, but the Texans, when fully healthy, have given the Patriots trouble. They're rolling in today with that beastly defense. I like that, and like you said, it's not like this is the best weaponry that Tom Brady's working with. Edelman's suspended. Chris Hogan's probably your top receiver right now. Rex Burkhead's probably your top running back. You do have a nice first-round pick in Sony Michel, but he can't seem to get healthy yet, which has been his issue since college. And then, of course, you got Gronk. But I'm with you. I'm not overly impressed with anyone other than Tom Brady on that roster. And, of course, Gronkowski, if he's healthy, and it looks like he is. But the Patriots are going to ride those two this year. I mean, that's going to be a big part of it. When Edelman gets back, Edelman comes back, and he'll be an effective player, of course. But that defense is not all that impressive to me on the Patriots side of the ball. They're smart. They're good in the red zone. But I think a guy like Deshaun Watson can give you problems. He's a dynamic player. Not in love with the Texans' run game or their offensive line, but they have Nuke Hopkins, and that dude is ridiculously good. And they've got a couple rookies coming in on the offensive side of the ball. But at the end of the day, I'm still leaning Patriots in that one, but I would not be shocked at all if you're right. my shock of the week, and maybe it's less of a shock now, with the aforementioned Khalil Mack move, I'm taking the Chicago Bears over the Green Bay Packers. I think it's going to be a great game.
I was thinking about that one.
It's a Monday night game. I think it's going to go overtime, and I think in overtime the Bears are going to take 30-27 because I think Mike Trubisky, if he takes the next step this year, the Bears could all of a sudden emerge as a really tough team. Their defense was already pretty solid before they got Khalil Mack. They go out, they trade for Khalil Mack and didn't have to give up, all things considered, a ton. They gave up 2 first-round picks, and they actually got a second-round pick back in addition to Khalil Mack, which is shocking in itself. But, I think Khalil Mack is that piece they were missing on defense. Yeah, he needs to get up to speed with the playbook. But I think, you can simplify his role in that it's, hey, Khalil, go get the quarterback. And not many offensive lines are going to have a lot of fun trying to stop him. So I think Green Bay is going to be good this year, of course. Aaron Rodgers is back. I think they have deficiencies in the offensive line and the run game a little bit. But their defense should be better. I think it's going to be a great battle for the division this year in that NFC North. I think all 4 teams are really solid. I think Detroit's probably the weakest of the 4. You can't discount the Minnesota Vikings, but on tomorrow night, I should say, I'm going with the Bears. I think the Bears are going into Green Bay, and they're gonna pull a little bit of a shocker tomorrow night. I think for my shock of the week. Did I give my lock of the week? Did I?
Yeah, you said your lock of the week. It was.
I'm sorry. Yes,
Baltimore Buffalo.
I apologize. I'm losing my mind this morning. It's been a long morning. It's not even 10:30 yet, so who knows how this afternoon is going to go. I'm excited. All right, and then I know we're pressed a little bit on time here, but as far as preview goes, we can kind of go through here, Shamir, and we can pick our 6 playoff teams, and we'll give a reason why for each conference. Let's start with your NFC and your New York Giants. I'm going to start right there in the NFC East, Samir. I like your Giants this year. I don't love them. I still have a lot of questions about the defense. One thing I'll say today, though, Samir, about today's matchup, if the Giants offense does some work today against the Jacksonville defense, which might be the best defense they play all year, that is a great sign. If they're able to go out there and put up, somewhere in the mid to high 20s in points or higher, that's a great day, even if they lose. And I think if they're able to put up that many points, they won't lose. But in any case, in the NFC East, I got to roll with the champs, man. I'm sorry. I got to roll with the champs. I know they didn't look overly impressive on Thursday night. They were able to scrape out the win. But keep in mind, they're getting some guys back. They're getting Carson Wentz back in a week or 2 here. They're getting Alshon Jeffrey back. They're gonna be clicking in all cylinders within the next couple of weeks, I feel. And I think right now that team is good enough to go back and repeat. Don't know that they're going to, but that's, I think, their division to lose. I'm not a believer in the Cowboys. Sorry, John Krell. Actually, I'm not sorry. The defense there is just is getting better, I think, but the offense is taking steps backward. The Giants, I think, are definitely pushing for a wild card spot, and I'll get to that in a second. And Washington, watch out for Washington. They're a little underrated, I feel. I don't think they're really a contender, but they're definitely going to be a tough team to play against. So in the East, I'm rolling with the Eagles. And then I'll do a little bit of sped-up version here for the other 3 divisions. NFC North, I talked about them already. That's going to be a as we say in the hockey world here in Pennsylvania, and throughout the hockey world, that's a gong show. There's 4 teams that can win that division. Right now, I'm rolling with the Minnesota Vikings. Again, for the same reason the Eagles, most complete team in the division, but that could be anyone. Any one of those 4 teams could win it. NFC South, a little different. It's more of a 2-horse race in my mind. People like the Carolina Panthers. I don't like the Buccaneers. I think both teams have some deficiencies. Panthers, I guess, could get it going, but I'm going with the New Orleans Saints, again, for the same reason. Super complete team. Yes, injuries can happen, but I'm going with the Saints in the South. And then the last one, I'm missing the West. The NFC West, a little bit different. I think that's the LA Rams all the way. Again, complete team. The Seahawks took, I think, a couple steps back. The Cardinals aren't there yet. And as much as people like the 49ers, until Jimmy G can prove it over a season, I'm not picking them to win squat. So I do like Jimmy G. I think he's going to be good. I just think the 49ers are a year away for being a true contender. So those are my 4 division winners. The Rams, the Saints, the Eagles, and the Vikings. And then for wild card, real quick here, Samir, I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers, and then I will concede here to you, Samir. I will say the New York Giants on a magical season will squeeze into that 6th seed.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. At least you got the Giants making it. But now this is my division winners. I think Philadelphia is going to hit a hangover wall. They're going to go through a rough stretch this year. I just think that they're going to get too complacent, especially Thursday night. They were lucky to win that game against the Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan had 5 chances to get that ball into the end zone to send Philadelphia home unhappy. So, I think in a way, Philadelphia beat themselves. Atlanta could beat themselves. I meant Atlanta beat themselves, not Philadelphia. I meant Atlanta beat themselves in that game because Matt Ryan had 5 chances to get that ball into the end zone. Philadelphia's defense just looked off rhythm all game. Atlanta was able to get the ball down to the end zone, into the red zone, yeah, pretty much. But I mean, they just couldn't execute when it counted. Atlanta just couldn't execute when it counted there. And Philadelphia had a little late surge at the end of the game to, send Atlanta home upset. I just kind of think that Atlanta had control of that game for much of the game. I think Atlanta kind of looked like the better team for, the first 3 quarters. Then Philadelphia just had that last stretch where they won the game. So, Philadelphia they were kind of lucky to come away with the win in that game. I mean, I only really watched the second half. I didn't really get a chance to watch the first half, but from what I saw, Atlanta looked like the better team, even though both teams didn't look that great. I will say that. So, it is a long season. Things could change, but, right now, if Carson Wentz is out for an extended period of time, he shouldn't be. He should be coming back soon. But if he is, I don't think Nick Foles is good enough to hold the fort down that much longer. So, it's going to be a close race in the NFC East division. It's going to be closer than many people think. It's not going to be, one team that runs away with it this year. But I think the Giants this year, they have enough firepower to get past the Philadelphia Eagles in that division. They have all these weapons on offense, so many different options to go to. And then the defense, I feel like, will be much rejuvenated, especially the higher paid guys like Jack Rabbit, Olivier Vernon, and Eli Apple also will be out there with something to prove this year. So I'm really liking the Giants this year to come away with that division. It's going to be close, though. It's going to be like within a game or two. I mean, it can go either way, but I'm going to be different here, and I'm going to say the Giants are taking that NFC East division. I think this is like a rejuvenation, bounce-back year. Eli Manning still has something to improve as well with an improved offensive line. I think the Giants are just going to come out there and really prove that they still got it. And in the NFC North, I'm right with you there. The Minnesota Vikings, they got that division pretty easily. I mean, Green Bay, I think, honestly, they're a little overrated at this point. I really don't see them being that good of a team. They were 7-9 last year. I know Aaron Rodgers went down with an injury, but even before then, they weren't looking that great. They kind of looked like they were off. 2 years ago, obviously, when they faced the Giants in the postseason, they looked bad for much of that year, and then they won like 6 or 7 in a row. So, I just kind of feel like the last couple of years there's been problem consistency there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them miss the playoffs entirely for the second consecutive year. And then the NFC South, the Saints, the Falcons, they don't look like a threat to this New Orleans Saints team whatsoever, especially when I saw how they beat themselves against the Philadelphia Eagles this game. I think the Saints get that division pretty easily. And then the NFC West, I think the 49ers are going to be more of a threat than many people are thinking. Remember, when Jimmy Garoppolo came in there, they rattled off 6 consecutive wins last year. So, I think that magic continues. Jimmy Garoppolo has a lot to prove coming from the Patriots organization. I feel like, he's just like, it's his time to take over and really use the weapons that he's got. He's got, Pierre Garcon coming in there. He's got, he's got some.
Exactly.
Who? No, there was another wide receiver that they got there. I'm just
good with.
Huh? Yes. There we go. Yes. I
They
mean,
just lost Jerick McKinnon though for the season. Their running back. He's
yeah,
out for the year.
yeah, I know that. I just kind of forgot the other wide receiver's name at the top of my head here, but I'm not saying that they're gonna
They
win
say
the.
the same thing about Brady. Can you name all of Brady's receivers right now?
Nope,
I know you can.
nope, nope. But I mean, at the same time here, though, I still think the Rams are gonna win that division. It's gonna be close, though. It's gonna be close. I think the 49ers this year, especially Richard Sherman coming in there, breathing new life into that defense. He's not the same cornerback that he was years ago, but he's
Right.
still got some left in the tank, and he's still got that veteran leadership and that I guess locker room presence to get these guys hyped up and outperform expectations. I think you know that'll be good for a couple more wins this year. Having all that experience together, and Jimmy G kind of out there proving. So I still got the Rams winning that division, but I'm going to take out the Packers for the wild card and put the 49ers in there. The Giants get the Eagles, I say they get that fifth wild card because, I got the Giants winning the NFC East, but the Eagles are still going to make the playoffs. They're not going to be that bad this year. And I got the 49ers at the six.
It's not a bad group. The NFC is loaded. I will say that. The NFC is loaded.
Packers are going to be very much in that mix, so they're going to be a better team than last year, but I think the 49ers this year have more to give than the Packers.
Yeah, I think in the NFC you can make a case for about 10, 11 teams, if not more. In the AFC, it's completely different. And that works out for my Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll start in the AFC North. It's still Pittsburgh's division to lose. Yes, their drama might catch up with them eventually here, but I'm going with the Steelers at least one more year here. I think they might have another one to come after that, but we'll see. I'm going with Pittsburgh in the North. I think Baltimore is very much a threat. People are not giving him enough credit because they don't believe in Joe Flacco anymore, and I understand that. But he looks like a different quarterback this year. Their defense is the real deal. It's going to come down to whether or not they have the receivers to prove that they can move the football effectively and consistently. The Bengals are the Bengals. Under their current coaching staff, current quarterback, current just ineptitude, I think they're going to be better than people initially expect, but they always kind of flame out. And if they're not a playoff year, it's a 7-9 year. And then the Cleveland Browns are going to be better. They're going to be better this year. They're going to make a push. I think their better option will eventually be Baker Mayfield, but I like that they're making him earn it. And Tyrod is certainly a respectable quarterback. I don't think he's going to light the world on fire. But I think Cleveland will be a team that gets significantly better this year. I think they're going to miss the playoffs, but I think they're going to take a big step forward. So Pittsburgh in the North. In the South, pretty interesting dynamic here. That not really. it's the top two teams are the teams to watch. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans. Who comes out on top? And all offseason I maintained it was Jacksonville, and then I watched Blake Bortles again. I remember that he was not very good, despite what he did to the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs. I remembered that Blake Bortles is not good. They've lost receivers left and right. Houston Texans, yes, they have their flaws as well, but that defense is right there with the Jaguars in my mind. And Deshaun Watson is much, much more a playmaker than Blaine Gabbert. See, I'm even thinking of the old days of Jacksonville than Blake Bortles. So I'm going with the Texans in the South. In the and that of course means I'm not giving the Colts their due, and I don't see why I need to. I like Andrew Luck. I need to see him protected before I believe in the Colts. And then I'm totally blanking. The Titans are interesting. I shouldn't have totally dismissed the Titans. But Marcus Mariota he's not impressing me right now. They have a good team around him. This is the year, if there's a year for him to break out. If he doesn't, I think it's time to start looking at other quarterback options. And I think, unfortunately, I like Marcus Mariota. I'm rooting for him. I think he's just not what they're looking for. I feel like I would have seen it by now. I hope he proves me wrong. NFC East. NFC East. I apologize. I mean, do we have to really debate here? It's the New England Patriots. It's the Patriots. It was the Patriots. You could have said that the Patriots were the AFC East champs 3 years ago for 2018-19, and I would have believed you. The Dolphins are the only team that, to me right now, strikes a legitimate threat if Ryan Tannehill is healthy. He's come off of back-to-back years missed with ACLs. The Jets, I think, like the Browns, are going to take a big step forward this year. I really do believe that. I think Sam Darnold is the truth. I've told you that many times. But I think there's still a couple pieces missing. I think they're getting there. They're another team I think is a year away. I think another year with a couple more pieces added, maybe a Le'Veon Bell in the future. That Jets team is going to be nasty. I just think they need one more year to get there. So in the East, of course, I'm going with the New England Patriots. And then in the AFC West, this is the division that is another gong show. This is the Wild West. Again, you could make a case for all four teams. I was a big Denver supporter in the offseason here of what the moves they were making. I love that they got Bradley Chubb. Their defense is going to be nasty. But Case Keenum looks like he's looked kind of like Case Keenum before Minnesota Case Keenum, and I'm very worried about that because everything else seems to be in place. They have weaponry all over their offense. Their offensive line's improved. It's not perfect, but it's improved. Their defense is very good. If Keenum can be what he was last year, the Broncos are a nightmare to deal with, especially going to Denver. If he's not, it's going to be one of those years where they just miss, I think, and I'm kind of leaning that way because that division is so competitive. The Chiefs are all offense. It's funny because they were all defense, not all defense, but their defense was so good for the last couple of years, and then they traded away all their best players, and they traded away Marcus Peters. Eric Berry is there coming back from injury. He's very good, but their pass rush has taken a big step backward. I can't fall in love with their defense, but their offense should be really good if Mahomes he continues to play like he's looked. That's a really solid team there. Potentially. But the Chargers are everyone's trendy pick, and I understand why. They have some key pieces in the right places. They got a great pass rush. They have Phillip Rivers, who's still playing at a very high level. They have some really good weapons on offense. Yes, they lost Hunter Henry for the year. They got Antonio Gates to come out of retirement. We'll see how he fares. He's not what he was, but he's still effective. He's still Antonio. So I as much as I wasn't going to at the beginning of the offseason, or really the beginning of the preseason, I got to go Chargers. I got to think the Chargers are the most talented and balanced team in that division right now. Chiefs could threaten. Broncos could threaten. I don't believe in the Raiders. I think they won't be as bad as I think they're going to be, which is it's a weird statement, I know, because for whatever reason, I think Derek Carr is going to bounce back after a tough year last year. But I think John Gruden's running that team straight into the ground, and he's going to be there for a long, long time. And I loved him as a broadcaster. In today's NFL, he is not adept. He's not adapting to the current NFL. He thinks and he said it. He said it himself. I want to take this game back to the 1990s, early 2000s. This is a very different game since he's been coaching. I think this is a rude awakening year for him, and he's going to have to adjust. He added a bunch of old players, got rid of their best player for draft picks, which I guess you could kind of justify. Sounded like it was more or less an ownership issue more than it was John Gruden. It sounded like they didn't have the money to pay him what he wanted, which is a little scary in itself. But at the end of that, again, that's something we could talk about down the road. I don't believe in the Raiders, so I'm going Chargers. So what did I say? Patriots in the East, Chargers in the West, Steelers in the North, Texans in the South. My two wild card teams. I don't want to come across as a salty fan here and just kick the Jaguars outright because that defense is legit. It is so good, but their offense is so depleted right now. It's Leonard Fournette and nothing else. They took injuries. They lost their top receiver for the season in Marquise Lee already, and they don't have much else on the offensive side of the ball. Good offensive line. I think they're going to miss. I wasn't believing that. I thought they were going to be one of the powerhouses in the AFC up until a couple weeks ago, but I think they're going to fall off. So I'm going to take them out of the equation. I'm going to put the Denver Broncos in because, as I said, I think they have the weaponry to challenge. The Chiefs, I'm so torn on because their offense looks so good, and lately their defense has looked pretty bad. I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Baltimore Ravens have missed the playoffs long enough. They're just a scrappy team. They play hard. I'm not a Joe Flacco guy, obviously, but I think the rest of that team is built up pretty nicely, and they'll be my sixth seed. So Denver and Baltimore making a tough, chippy, physical AFC playoffs, if not the most talented. But at the end of the day, my six playoff teams, New England, Pittsburgh, San Diego, Houston, Baltimore, and Denver.
You mean Los Angeles instead of San Diego?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm still stuck with that. It's going to take me another year. Yes, the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah.
I just can't get that out of my head that they're not the San Diego Chargers anymore. But yes.
Yeah, okay, now my picks for the AFC East, I mean, let's be real. The Jets are going to win that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Hey, if Brady goes down, you might be right.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
Brady
it's
goes down.
possible. I can't say. I mean, I don't think it's going to be as runaway as it's been in recent years. But I mean, right now, I'm gonna say Patriots. I'm gonna take the safe pick here. I'm gonna say New England just because, you know, Tom Brady is Tom Brady. He never gets hurt. Well, not recently at least.
Only if Bernard Pollard is out there on the field, the scourge of New England. There's not a more hated man in New England. I think he's gone and injured every Patriots star of the last decade. I think Bernard Pollard has given a major injury too.
I think, the Patriots are going to win the AFC East. AFC North, though, I'm sorry, Tim. Sorry, I got the Baltimore Ravens winning that division, especially with what's going on in the Pittsburgh locker room. I can't stay optimistic from a far distance about where things are going for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that this is Baltimore's chance for them to come in and really, show what they got. So I think Baltimore's in. They look like they got a strong defense, and
we're not friends anymore.
Hey, you didn't pick the Giants, so we're even.
I put them in as a wild card.
Yeah, I mean, you never know yet. You never know. You never know. We'll see. AFC South though, Jacksonville does have a lot of injuries. I will say that. So I guess I'm gonna have to be in the same boat with you here, Texans, because they got such an easy schedule this year as well. I think they're gonna run away with that division. I think they might have the best record in the entire AFC because of how easy the schedule is. Looking this year.
Watson, yeah.
Especially if Deshaun Watson goes off, I think. Houston, I think that's their division to lose this year. I think they got all locked up. New England might take it easy this year as well. They may, lose a couple games. I mean, I got Houston beating New England today, and that's going to be a big factor down the stretch if that comes to fruition. They're going to have probably very similar records, but I think Houston's going to I think they got it this year in terms of, winning out this year. The schedule looks pretty damn easy. And AFC West, man.
It's hard.
That is hard. I mean, you got the Chargers winning. I mean, I like the Chiefs a lot on paper, though, man. I really do. I like Mahomes a lot. I like Kareem Hunt. They got Sammy Watkins in there now, too. Don't forget about him.
That's right.
I'm sorry, man. I'm gonna have to go with the Chiefs. I don't think the Chargers have.
You don't have to apologize, man.
No, I know. I know. No, their offense though. The way the NFL is changing is that offense is more important than defense now. I mean, yeah, defense is still important, but I feel like it's become more of an offensive league, which I've touched up on many times before in the past. So I think Kansas City this year, they got a bunch of firepower out there. Kareem Hunt's another year older. He's going to be much more of a weapon. I just really like Kansas City this year to come out of that division. And, I mean, the Chargers are going to be a threat, and the Broncos could be a threat. I think the Broncos are more of like an 8-8 team this year, though. They got some flaws, but they're good enough to be 500. I don't think they're good enough to be on another level, but they're good enough to, like, contend and maybe be a scare down the stretch. I think they're a year away themselves. They got to get some more experience, from their, I guess, on their offense. I mean, they got a good quarterback, obviously, Case Keenum, who doesn't look good this year, but, I just kind of think...
It's early.
Yeah, it's early.
I'm with you.
I know. I mean, like, Case Keenum, though, like, I feel like Minnesota was just the perfect spot for him. I feel like all the pieces were in place for him for him to succeed. And if that's not replicated in a different offense, I don't think Denver really has that many weapons that Minnesota had last year. So, I think his play is going to falter a little bit because of that. And the system is not as tailor-made for him as Minnesota's was. I mean, it's early. He can always adjust. But, I mean, Denver, like I said, they're a 500 team. I don't think they're going to be, they could contend for a wild card spot. But I just don't see the likelihood of them actually getting into the postseason. All the talent that's out there in the AFC. So I got the Chiefs winning the AFC West. Now, as for my 2 wild card spots, Jacksonville's still going to be a dominant team. I feel like their defense is just way too good. Jalen Ramsey's got a lot to prove after.
Got a lot to say.
he's got a lot to say. Now he's got a lot to prove. So,
He's a great
you
player.
know, yeah, he is. And then also Leonard Fournette, a big believer in him. I don't think Blake Bortles is really as bad as he's made out to be, but he's not a perfect quarterback, but he's good enough for that system they got in place. I mean, yeah, you touched up on Jacksonville's injuries this year. That is going to be problematic offensively, but I feel like their defense is just too good for them to, really give up on the team and you know make them bad enough to miss out on the playoffs. So I got Jacksonville as the sixth, I'd say. And I got your Steelers in at five. They're still going to make the playoffs. I think, you
All
know,
right.
I think they'll still make the playoffs. I mean, they could very well win that division, but right now, I mean, if Le'Veon Bell, I'll say this: if Le'Veon Bell comes back fast, the Steelers will win that division. But if he's holding out till week 10 or later on, late into the season, I think there's an opportunity for Baltimore to really come in and steal that division. So I'd say my pick is pending on Le'Veon Bell right here. And as for San Diego, I mean not San Diego, Los Angeles. I made that mistake now. I mean, a lot of it's gonna that defense. If they lose Joey Bosa for an extended period of time, then I just think that they're not gonna have enough firepower to get past those Kansas City Chiefs. So, um, a lot of it's gonna depend on the health of many players on Los Angeles because they already lost Hunter Henry for the rest of the year. I don't know how much Antonio Gates has left in that tank. He's an old man, so I mean, Melvin Gordon's there, and Phillip Rivers still got something to prove. I feel like, but I'm just liking Kansas City's offense that much better than Los Angeles's. So, um, yeah, those are my picks. I got Kansas City AFC West. I got Texans in the South. I got Baltimore in the North. I mean, that's pending the whole Le'Veon Bell situation.
Yeah.
But
Hey, I mean,
I wanted to be different here. I didn't want to, make all the same picks. New England's obviously winning the East for now, and then I got Steelers in the 5, and I got Jacksonville in the 6.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I will say this: I would not shock me if your AFC North prediction comes to fruition. Would not shock me in the slightest. Now, of course, though, Super Bowl. I mean, we don't have to go through every single seed and playoff matchup, but Super Bowl picks here, real quick. I guess I'll go first on this one. I think my very brief synopsis of the playoffs to come. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers do get Le'Veon Bell back, but they get him back in a way that's weird because they'll get him back. I'm going to go now on the bench, say if he's holding out for week 1, he's going to hold out till week 10. It's going to be nice and fresh for the postseason. And I think by the point that they make the postseason, I'm going to say when and not if, they're going to have a fresh Le'Veon Bell. They're going to have an offense that is a juggernaut. And they're going to have a defense, while not perfect, will be better than a year ago. And I know I'm making every homer claim in the book right now. And an injury will probably happen this afternoon to derail everything. But I think Pittsburgh Steelers go to the Super Bowl. On the opposite side, I think it's going to be the Black and Gold Bowl because I think the New Orleans Saints are the most complete team in football this year. There are a couple teams that make a really strong case. I think you're probably going to see the Eagles knocked out before the NFC Championship. Can't say it for sure because I was dead wrong last year. But I think the Saints and Vikings go to the NFC Championship game. Vikings just get beat again, and this time not blown out, but just beaten in the NFC Championship game. And we get the Saints and the Steelers. And I'm taking, get this, Samir, the New Orleans Saints in a matchup with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Drew Brees wins the battle with Big Ben, and I think it would be a game for the ages. But I think, unfortunately for my Steelers, the New Orleans Saints, they're just so deep in so many areas. There's a couple minor weaknesses here and there. I do want to see who else steps into the pass rush beyond just Cam Jordan. That is very important. But at the end of the day, I think Drew Brees, in the twilight of his career as well, is just Drew Brees, and he gets his second ring to match Big Ben in ring totals. I think the Saints, at the end of the day, are your 2018-19 Super Bowl champions.
Well, Tim, I hate to say this, but I got the Saints winning the Super Bowl as well. I think I got them in the Super Bowl.
Great minds think alike.
I just think they're just dominant. but I'll do 3 different predictions here. Just because
Okay.
you know I want one tailored to my dream scenario. I got the Giants and the Patriots again in the Super Bowl
Ooh,
in this
that's my
dream
brother's dream
scenario.
scenario.
I got the Giants beating them again. You know,
Mhm.
I got the Giants. They find that magic down the stretch. OBJ is just too dominant, and their defense rediscovers their form from 2 years ago. And Saquon Barkley takes off, and Eli Manning rediscovers his elite magic. You know, that'll make a perfect recipe for down the stretch, and they're just looking dominant, and you know they look like the team to beat, and they go far into the playoffs, and then New England will be there to meet them. So I just in that scenario I got the Giants winning, but I mean that's not my real prediction. My real prediction, I'll get to that. My real prediction is New Orleans versus. Oh man, I mean, I would like to pick the Steelers based on what you said. Like Le'Veon Bell, if he's healthy. I think they're a bigger threat than the Baltimore Ravens are in the postseason if Le'Veon Bell's healthy. I mean, they might even be a bigger threat than the Ravens flat out in the playoffs because the Ravens just, I don't think, have enough to get to the Super Bowl this year, even though they could have a better regular season. I feel like they're better suited in this regular season right now over the Steelers without Le'Veon Bell. But you know, oh man, this is tough here. Like I want to say the Texans will go to the Super Bowl, you know,
Yeah.
over the Steelers, but I can't get myself to believe that. I just can't. So um, I just can't. Like I just think they're a good team, but I think they're a season away from really being that elite team. I mean, a lot of it's going to depend on the health of J.J. Watt in this
Fair.
scenario. You know, so I mean, as much as I would love to pick Houston to win it all this year. I just can't get myself. I mean, not win it all to get to the Super Bowl this year in this scenario. I'm going to say I got the Steelers going to the Super Bowl with the Saints.
So we both have
Yeah,
the Saints beating the
yeah,
Steelers.
yeah.
Hey,
That. But if I had to pick something different,
yeah.
if I had to pick something different, not Giants, not Steelers, no Saints, none of that. Um, you know, if I had to say something, I mean, I got the Saints going to the Super Bowl, AFC. That's not changing. But if I had to say a team different from the Steelers, you know, I'm just gonna have to say the Texans because Deshaun
Okay.
Watson looks good, and I think honestly, New England's their window is closing. I just don't think Tom Brady and Bill Belichick necessarily see eye to eye anymore. So that's going to be problematic throughout the course of the year, and just I just don't think they have that many weapons. I mean, we'll have to see how Julian Edelman comes back off of suspension. That's going to be a big factor. And if James White's really their answer at the running back position, and Rex Burkhardt as well. So, I mean, there's a
Well,
lot of.
I was about to make that mention. I like that we also both kept New England out of the Super
Mhm.
Bowl for a change.
I
And as
know.
soon as they say that, their Gillette Stadium pops up on TV. But no, yeah,
Yeah, I don't have the Patriots going this year.
I think you're right that they are going to not represent the AFC this year. I think for a lot of the reasons we both said, it's hard to bet against Tom Brady because he is the GOAT, and I hate to say it, but he is. And in my mind, there's not been a more consistently dangerous and just transcendent player than Brady in the NFL. And I recognize I have not been alive for the entirety of the NFL, but it's just ridiculous the consistency that this team has with Brady at the helm. But like you said, they've lost a lot. They're getting a few things back. They're going to be a dangerous team no matter what, unless Brady gets hurt. Then all of a sudden you're talking about probably a team drafted in the top 15, top 10.
I mean, also don't sleep on Jacksonville. Their defense can come up big in
Well, right, and that's the thing is
in a
and you
playoff
kind
game.
of touched on it. The league has changed. I mean, I think yes, an elite defense can get you there, but just the way the rules, especially this year with this new helmet rule, that we'll see how heavily they enforce it. They're just gearing it so much towards point scoring, and that's the way you market the game. That's how it's done. That's big scores get you big bucks, and I just feel like if they had anybody but Blake Bortles, they might be my pick to win it all. I just think Bortles is such a drain on them because you never know what you're going to get. Yes, he's athletic, he can run, and yes, he can put together a game. But keep in mind, this guy struggled to complete passes in the flat against the Bills last year in the wild card round. And again, the Bills have a decent defense. I think that's underrated. But at the end of the day, the end of the day, there's just not enough there for me to, especially in the receiving group, because you let Allen Robinson walk, Marquise Lee's out for the year. You got a bunch of guys that are not number one receivers, and a lot of them probably aren't number two receivers that you're going to bank on for me. And I know they're a run-first offense. They're old school football. That's where John Gruden should have gone if there was an opening. Obviously, there wasn't. And then if Leonard Fournette, who plays the game's most grueling position, goes down, yeah, T.J. Yeldon's a really good number two running back, but can he hold up for a whole season, or at least as a workhorse for however long it would be? I'm not there. So I think Jacksonville is a team that is good and that they're going to be very, very good for a while because their defense is loaded and young. But they got to make a change at quarterback. I thought they'd be the team to land Kirk Cousins. I was wrong.
I thought they were going to get Eli Manning before.
Yeah, that was another idea because a lot of people thought, hey, Coughlin will say, hey, I'll go get him. But at the end of the day, I just think they're going to fall a little short this year. They're going to regroup. They're going to get some weapons. Even if they stick with Bortles, they're going to have to get better weapons. And then we'll see for the next 5 years how they do. But I don't disagree with the fact that the Texans could win it. I think it's a great year for the league in that there's a lot of teams that can go out there and win this thing. I think there's a lot this year, a lot more than there typically is. The parity is real this year. And even though I picked the Steelers and to make it in the AFC, it would not shock me at all if San Diego or Houston is the team to go. I mean, the changing of the guard, quote unquote, would include the Steelers because between New England and Pittsburgh, the only other team that has represented regularly has been Denver and Indy, and that's because of Peyton Manning. You've seen a couple, exceptions like Baltimore got in there a year, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I think that stat still holds. The last, now we're coming up on 15 years, the quarterbacks that have represented the AFC in the Super Bowl, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, and Joe Flacco. That's it. I'm trying to think of any other year that I'm forgetting, but I think it's coming up on 14, 15 years now. It's been 4 quarterbacks that have gone for the AFC. So it is time. I think there are some good quarterbacks that could take them otherwise. So we'll see. I know I downplayed Tennessee. They're a team that if Mariota figures it out, they're pretty decent all around. They could surprise a little bit. I don't think they're there yet, but you never know. And then there's a couple other floaters hanging in there that could surprise. But end of the day, Samir, I'm sticking with my guns here. I think Drew Brees, this is his year.
I agree as well. I think he needs to get that second Super Bowl ring on one of his fingers, and I think this is the year. His team's just as deep as it's ever been, and I just think, right now I just can't see another team that can beat them. I mean, I would love to say the Giants, but I'm gonna have to wait. I'm gonna have to see more from them before I can make that declaration.
And lastly, here, Samir, I mean, we could spend a whole show on this, but the last thing that was a major headline, not the last thing, but one of the other major headlines this past week and change was Colin Kaepernick and his signing with Nike. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that just to close out here. And again, we don't have to make it again, I know we could spend a whole show talking about this.
Literally.
But I do want to just put some thoughts because it's been so relevant this week. I'll just throw mine out there real quick here for you. I'm all for players kneeling. I have no issue with that. And you know what? I think Colin Kaepernick started the whole movement there, and there were ways he was conducting it initially that I didn't like as much. I know that's not what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to make everyone feel warm and fuzzy. It's supposed to draw attention to important issues that need to be fixed. But he went out and talked with the members of the military, and they came up with that as an idea that was respectful, but also drew attention, and it did just that. To see him now get that endorsement deal with Nike, I think this is bigger than Kaepernick, obviously, because it is about someone standing up for a cause and giving up a lot to do so. I know people are fired up on all sides on this, and my biggest thing from this is I do agree that there are things in this country, and there are many things in this country that need to be addressed. I'm full, and we're on all sides right now trying to figure out a billion different ways to address a billion different issues. But, the idea that there are so many people in this country being killed in situations they didn't need to be, In particular, the African American men in this country that are being shot by police. Uh, I'm not an anti-police guy. I'm not that. I think it's important to have that in this country. I think it's important that there's two-way communication between citizens and police because, hey, they're here to protect us and there should be a standard here to uphold where people aren't gunned down in the way that they are. I think at the end of the day, this brings us closer to that, though it's a painful road for some. I don't think it's a painful road for everyone. It's the people up front here doing their job and that are going to be the ones that I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it. The people on the police side of things and it's by far not an indictment of every single police officer in this country. It's just a matter of just finding ways we can be more consistent and avoiding these issues and having this violence and this upheaval and all this turmoil. And I say that without any knowledge of how to be a police officer, and I say that knowing it's an extremely difficult job and that there are things that are always going to happen that are unpredictable. But I think to affect the change that needs to happen, to just bring about some more consistency in the way this justice is handed out and that people don't need to be killed as readily as they're being killed, I think it's a good thing for getting us closer to that, yes, Colin Kaepernick signed an endorsement deal with Nike, and people will debate, all day about, what that means and now he's making millions. What's he going to complain about? Blah, blah, blah. But the man, he took a stand. And, I've been on record before saying I'm not his biggest fan as a football player. I don't think he's as good as some people make him out to be. But, to see his progression to the point now where he is an icon for trying to better things is important, I think. And I think that needs to extend beyond just him. And it has, of course, across all sports, or just about, to all these other athletes. And I think, they're going to continue. As I see up on the screen, the NFL's not going to have an anthem policy this year. So we're pretty much in the same boat as we were last year. I think it's important that they continue to show support for what they believe in. And, that's what makes this country great. I understand not everyone agrees with it. I get that. My family's full of veterans, and the ones that I've spoken with have no problem with the kneeling. And I know other veterans that feel the way. I know veterans who feel the opposite. But, I think at the end of the day, that's what this country's about. You have the right to protest. Yes, teams are workplaces, and at the end of the day, they have the right to discipline people for violating what their rules are. But I think they're starting to come around more in this very, very turbulent period of time to realize, hey, we have to allow for a platform here. Not every team's going to do it. Not every team's going to be okay with that. I understand that. And it's about changing that type of a mindset, just to try to figure out a way in this very turbulent time in this country and in this world that we can somehow come to common ground. And that's this issue, and it's pretty much all issues right now that we have to find a way to do that. And understandably, there's going to be a lot of pushback both ways. Sometimes not understandably, obviously, but we have to get there. And I think it's always hard, and it's going to take a lot. And hopefully, we can talk about this in the near future in a way that's more progressive and less divisive.
No, Tim, I pretty much agree with everything you said, but what's getting lost in transition with this kneeling thing with Colin Kaepernick taking a stand and kneeling during the national anthem is that, he actually sat during the first
Right.
protest, and, he got backlash, rightfully so. Maybe that wasn't the most polite thing to do. So he corrected himself. He went to go meet with the veteran, and then they talked it out. He asked him, "What's a respectful way to protest during the national anthem?" And he said, "Kneeling." So he started kneeling for the national anthem to show that he still respects the flag, but there's still something that needs to be done in this country for, you know,
Yeah.
for the unlawful killings of African Americans by police officers in this country, police brutality, and African Americans losing their lives at alarming rates at the hands of police officers and the justice system not handing down punishments to those police officers and them getting paid leave for all these incidents that have come about. So, you know, that eventually, Colin Kaepernick eventually felt like he needed to take a stand and really protest peacefully at work, because he's on camera at work every day, and that's where people
Mhm.
are going to pay attention to him. People are
Right.
not going to pay attention to if he showed up in San Francisco, in the middle of the city somewhere. He started kneeling and holding up signs saying, end police brutality in America. People are just going to walk and go about their days, and no one's really going to say anything. I mean, maybe some people will say something, but it's not going to get as much attention as if he's kneeling during the national anthem on TV. So, I mean, I understand people's love for the country and the flag. America, quite honestly, is a great country. It's given my parents an opportunity to make a living coming over as immigrants and provide a safe environment for me and my family for, you know, for a successful life ahead. But at the very same time, we grew up in New York State. We didn't grow up in Alabama. We didn't grow up in Kentucky or those, less diverse states. So we wouldn't know life down there. We don't know if we would be as accepted as we are up here where it is more diverse. But that's another conversation for another day. But with the kneeling thing with Colin Kaepernick, I'm for it as well. I think Nike did a great job with sponsoring him because he did sacrifice a lot. He sacrificed his football career. Even though if he would be a backup or something, he sacrificed his good standing with a lot of the community. He said, he kind of put himself out there, and now he's made an example of, for a lot of people's eyes doing something bad, and a lot of people's eyes doing something good. Reality is, he's probably not going to be able to play in the NFL again because of what he did, well, because of his kneeling for the anthem. But what a lot of people are forgetting about, you know, in terms of his motives here, is that he is not trying to disrespect the flag or the military or police officers. He's trying to raise awareness to issues in this country that are so relevant in you know today's society. 50 years ago when there wasn't camera or social media to document everything that police officers has done. This has been going on since before time, since before Martin Luther King's time. you know African Americans in our country and other minorities have been mishandled by police officers, you know, in this country, and we can go on and on about each and every incident, but that's another can of worms to open. So I won't go there. But I feel like everyone of color should be able to walk these streets freely in America, and not have to, always be so aware of their surroundings where they could be killed within a few seconds if they walk past a police officer, and just honestly, or some ignorant fool out there on the streets saying, "Go back to your country. You don't belong here." People of all color, quite honestly, in this country. This country is founded on immigration, on people coming from different countries, no matter your skin color. You're coming over from Europe, you know. Your skin may be white, you may be the majority race, skin color in this country, but it doesn't mean that other people of different skin colors are any less in this country. We're all immigrants here. The only people that can claim this land as their own are Native Americans, and that's a whole nother can of worms to open as well, in terms of how they're treated in this country. So, not to get too off track here, I think what people don't realize a lot. I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people who are against the whole kneeling thing. What I think they're not realizing here is that he's not out there disrespecting the military or the flag or police officers or the country. Rather, he's speaking out for those who can't speak out themselves, or those who have never gotten a chance to speak out, you know, to injustices that have gone on in this country. And, you know, uh, Colin Kaepernick has that voice, he has that power to raise awareness to these issues. And a lot of veterans have said themselves, or guys that have served in the army, pretty much. Pat Tillman's brother said Pat Tillman would have been right there kneeling with him. We all know that Pat Tillman sacrificed his NFL career to serve in the U.S. Army after the 9/11 attacks, and ultimately sacrificed his life. But I have a lot of respect for Pat Tillman for doing that. That is very noble of him to sacrifice his NFL career to fight for our country. Pat Tillman has all my respect, but that doesn't make Colin Kaepernick any less of a hero in this situation, because, Pat Tillman fought for his right to protest. These veterans fought for his right to protest, no matter where he's at. And I know, if we're gonna say the whole workplace thing, I get it. When he's wearing a San Francisco 49ers jersey, he's clocked into work. He's getting paid. But at the same time, it's different being a professional athlete than any other job because you're in the spotlight. And the national anthem, is I don't have to go into work every day and stand for the national anthem with my heart over my chest in front of thousands of other people in the crowd and then put on a performance for you. You know, most of the country doesn't have to do that every day. So it's a little bit different in the situation, at least in my opinion. So, you know, a lot of these people that are against Colin Kaepernick kneeling for the anthem, I guess, kind of claim to really care about the troops. Do they care that, there are veterans on the streets, that have served our country that can't find a home to live, anything to eat? You see in New York City or anywhere else, really, they hold up signs. I mean, some of them might be fake, but I'm gonna assume that they're real for a second. A lot of them are real. I'm not saying that they're all fake, but some of them might be. But I'm gonna assume that in the allness terms of here that it's all real here, and these homeless veterans, served their country and now aren't getting the respect to find a home and proper food and utilities for them to survive every day. They're out in the streets begging for food. Shouldn't that be addressed in this country? Shouldn't those homeless veterans find a home and really live a life that they deserve to live after, you know, putting their lives on the line for our country to continue to have the rights that it has? Shouldn't they have a home? And all those Nikes that you are burning, if you're gonna burn them, you don't have to support Nike after that. You don't have to. I'm not saying you have to, but donate it to somebody who can use them. You donate to those vets. They would be more than happy to wear those Nikes. You know, because they don't have proper clothing. Or donate it to the less fortunate. Don't burn those pieces of clothing because those are valuable clothes that you spent money on, and now it's going to waste because you don't agree with a certain a certain direction they're going in. And with Subway as well. When Jared Fogle got charged with child molestation, did you guys boycott Subway? I don't think so. So, you know, you can't have it all ways here. If you're gonna protest one thing, you gotta protest the other. So, having said all that, you know, good job by Nike for giving Colin Kaepernick the right to be a sponsor for your company, and you know, I give I can say I've worked for Nike in the past. They've always been a very progressive company, and their values have always been in line with where our country needs to progress into the future. So, hats off to them, and hats off to Colin Kaepernick here. And honestly, hats off to all those who serve our country. Hats off to police officers who sacrifice their lives on a daily basis. But something needs to be done with the justice system, and something needs to be done with getting the proper police officers into the system and with proper training, because this is ridiculous how they're letting these police officers who, you know, probably just need another job because they didn't want to acquire the skills to get, you know, I guess a more lucrative job or a job that was harder to acquire. So they, in a way, I'm not going to say they took the easy way out, but, you know, I'm going to have to say it here. A lot of police officers that I kind of know personally growing up with from high school just kind of ran out of options in terms of finding a job and kind of just went to the police academy because they just kind of had nowhere else to go. So, I think they need to make getting a police officer job harder to get in this country because, you know, we need to have more competent people serving in the police force.
And yeah, at the end of that, Samir, I'm with you on just about every point there, and I think it's it's going to be time will tell. It's we're at a point now in our country, obviously, where there's a lot going on and a lot of things up in the air, and a lot of debate, to say the least, on a number of social issues. So it's going to be it's going to be it's going to be a process. I can't think of another way to put it. But there's a lot of different ways everything could go, and you got to hang in there, hope for the best, and do what we can to support what we think is right. So, all that,
I mean, quite honestly, I guess before we sign off here, you know, I think it's more than just a select few police officers in the line of duty that are taking away African American and other minorities' lives. On a seemingly consistent basis. I mean, you know, I would like to. I do think that most police officers are good people and that they genuinely care about the community. But at the same time, I think it's more than just a select few police officers that you know have kind of made this, made an environment unsafe for everyone to thrive in.
Okay, sorry, I lost you there for a second. Okay, gotcha. No, I heard that last part. I mean it's select few, and that it's probably not the best phrase for it, but in that it's happened all over. I mean it's about the relative terms, and one is too many, and and that's the instance again. I mean, I'm not taking away from the profession. It's an extremely difficult one. It's
Absolutely.
one in which you risk a lot, but at the same time, there has to be when that much is at stake. There does have to be some kind of way to regulate things. I know that's much easier said than done, but there has to be a way in which it's not as easy to take someone's life away. And I understand, in some instances that is necessary, and that doesn't have to do with race. That can be any situation whether it's terrorism, whether it's someone who's very dangerous and armed. We see mass shootings all over, and that's another conversation for another day as well. But at the end of the day, it's about opening up that channel of communication. And I know it's open some places already. I mean, there have been plenty of police departments across the country that are working and talking about this issue and trying to further ideas that will help fix this issue, and prevent it from becoming a bigger issue moving forward. So I mean, it's a complicated issue to be sure, and it's not an overnight fix as much as people want it to be, and I understand that. And it's going to take time, and it's going to hopefully we don't have to see these types of incidents continue, but it's hard to say that we won't. And we have to. It's one of those things that I understand a lot of the heatedness to it, obviously, especially when you're talking about people dying. But it's also something that's going to take a lot of work, and as much as it sucks, it's going to take some time. So, again, you gotta hope for the best, and it's good that these people in high power places of influence, or at least in high places of public perception, I should say, and then to that extent, influence are drawing attention to it, so that people in power who can affect these policies can make adjustments and changes. When they feel so compelled, which is hopefully very, very soon, with all the effort that's gone into it. But with all that said, Samir, I know we're discussing an important one here, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm trying to cut you off or anything. We're coming up here on the start of Week 1 of the NFL season, and we're excited to see that get underway. And of course, everything else that we keep talking about is progressing. I mean, we didn't talk about it this time. We have baseball playoffs coming up, and that's just around the corner. September baseball is well underway here. Wild card races and all those things to discuss. Of course, talk all day about New York sports and the Yankees, and I know we didn't even get to it today. There's David Wright and that whole fiasco with the Mets. That'll be a thing that we'll see boil up in the next couple of days, weeks here. That we'll be keeping an eye on. Then, of course, basketball, hockey right around the corner as well. So, a lot more to discuss, to break down, and to get into. And then, of course, as always, I'm very excited to move forward with all of that and talk about it with you.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great NFL season. Hopefully, a great one for the Giants and maybe for the Steelers as well. And maybe they'll meet in the Super Bowl this year.
That would be a heck of a game.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to get together for that game.
Oh, yeah.
Tim, always a pleasure, my man. I'm glad we had some great talks today, man.
Good stuff, Shamir, as always. And then, of course, we'll be back again. A little bit difficult to say the exact date when, just because we both have some dynamic schedules at the moment. Especially, I'm back in PA now, and we'll try to get a regular time. I don't know, Sunday morning. Samir, we'll probably discuss that. But hopefully, once we have it all hammered out, we'll have our continued scheduled shows. And move forward. As I said, looking forward to continuing to shoot the breeze.
Absolutely. See you later, Tim.